A black Belgian Malinois tore the leash clean out of a man's hand. The dog hit the snow at full sprint and didn't look back. The man shouted once. The dog kept running. Snow fell sideways now, wind biting through 3 layers of wool. He cursed and broke into a run. His boots punched through the drifts. He could barely see the dog ahead of him, just a dark shape vanishing into the white. The dog had never broken command before. Not in 8 years. Not in combat. Not in a thunderstorm. Not even once. His name was Cole Brennan, 2 tour overseas, and he knew his K9 didn't run for nothing. Whatever was out there in the dark, the dog had locked onto it. What Cole found in that snow at the edge of the dark tree line nearly stopped his heart cold. Stay with me on this one. That night didn't start like an emergency. Cole Brennan had been doing the same evening walk for 7 years. Out the back door of his cabin, down the gravel path, through the gate, and along the tree line until the fence ended and the open ground began. Then back. 25 minutes if he kept moving. 40 if Ranger found something interesting. He'd bought the cabin after his second tour. 2 bedrooms, a wood stove, a generator for the bad nights. 40 miles north of nowhere in particular. The kind of place where you could go 3 days without seeing a vehicle pass on the road. That was the point. After what he'd seen overseas, Cole didn't want to see anything else for a while. Ranger came home with him a year later. Belgian Malinois. Black coat, brown eyes, 83 pounds of muscle and instinct. They'd worked together for 6 years on active duty. 3 deployments. More night raids than Cole could count. When the dog's working life ended, the unit gave Cole the option to take him home. Cole didn't even blink. He signed the paperwork the same afternoon. People who didn't know military dogs didn't understand the bond. They thought it was like having a smart pet. It wasn't. A working K9 is a partner. You don't pet him. You don't baby talk him. You watch him, and he watches you, and the 2 of you keep each other alive in places where nothing else can be trusted. By the time you come home, you know each other better than most husbands and wives. So when Cole opened the door that night and Ranger went stiff, he noticed. The dog usually trotted out ahead of him on the walk. Tail relaxed. Ears up but easy. Just a working animal stretching his legs. That night was different. Ranger stopped on the porch. Lifted his nose. Held it. Cole watched him for a second. The wind was coming hard out of the north. Snow was already falling. The thermometer on the porch said 7 degrees. Bad weather to be outside, but they'd both been in worse. He clipped the leash on. Ranger's collar was old leather, dark from years of use, with 2 tags hanging from the ring. One had Ranger's name and Cole's number. The other was a small brass disc with a unit insignia on it. Cole had hung it there the day he brought the dog home. He'd never taken it off. They walked. Down the gravel. Through the gate. Along the fence line. Ranger didn't sniff anything. That was the first sign. A working dog out for an evening walk noses everything. Tracks. Scat. The places other dogs marked. He's checking the world. But that night Ranger wasn't checking. He was scanning. Head up. Ears forward. Walking like a man does when he thinks somebody's behind him. Cole knew that walk. He'd seen it 100 times. He let the leash go a little loose. Said nothing. Watched. A quarter mile down the fence, Ranger stopped. Cold hard stop. One paw lifted. Frozen. The wind pushed snow sideways across the field. Cole listened. He couldn't hear anything but the wind. Ranger took 2 slow steps off the path. Toward the trees. Cole followed. The leash went tight. The dog turned his head, looked at him, then looked back at the woods. The look was clear. Cole had seen it during deployments more times than he could count. It said there's something there. He could have called the dog off, could have tugged the leash, said home, turned around and walked back to the cabin. The wind was already cutting through his coat. His face hurt. He had a fire waiting, a meal in the oven. Common sense said go home. But Cole had spent 6 years learning that when this dog said there's something there, there was something there. He unhooked the leash. Ranger looked at him one more time, just to confirm. Then the dog tore out of his hand and into the snow. That's where the real story begins. Not on the porch, not at the fence, but at the moment a man with 2 tour behind him chose to trust an animal over his own comfort, his own warmth, his own sense. Because what Ranger had locked onto out there in the trees wasn't a deer. It wasn't a coyote. It wasn't anything that walked on 4 legs through this country looking for food. It was 3 lives. 3 small lives. And they had less than an hour left. Cole moved as fast as he could through the drifts. His boots punched holes a foot deep with every step. The snow stung his face. He couldn't see Ranger anymore. Only the trail of disturbed powder where the dog had run. He followed it. 100 yards. 200. The trees came up on his left. Old-growth pine and fir dense, the kind of woods that swallowed sound. He passed the fence line and kept going. He was off his property now. Didn't matter. He could hear Ranger barking ahead. Short, sharp barks. Not aggressive. Alert. The kind he used on point. Cole pushed through a thicket and came into a small clearing. Ranger was standing at the base of a pine. Stock still. Head down. Looking at something on the ground. Cole walked up next to him. It took him a second to understand what he was looking at. There was a wooden box. Crude. Plywood maybe 2 feet by 3 feet, with a hinged top. 2 cinder blocks sat on top of the lid, holding it shut. Snow had drifted around it, almost burying the bottom half. Cole stared. Then he heard it. A whine. Faint. So thin he almost mistook it for the wind. He dropped to his knees. Shoved the cinder blocks off. The lid was frozen shut. He had to wedge his glove under the edge and heave. The wood cracked open. What he saw inside took the air out of his chest. 3 dogs. All small. All curled into a single shivering pile. The one on top was a brindle terrier mix, ribs showing through her coat, her eyes half closed. Underneath her was a black lab puppy, maybe 4 months old, not moving. And under both of them, almost flattened by the others trying to keep warm, was a tiny brown thing. A beagle, maybe, or beagle mix. So still that for a second Cole thought he was already gone. The smell hit him next. Urine. Fear. The metallic tang of an animal in shock. The terrier on top managed to lift her head. She looked at Cole. Her eyes were milky with cold. There was a thick rope around her neck, knotted twice, the strands embedded in her matted fur where it had grown into her skin. She had been wearing that rope a long time. Cole said one word out loud. No. He didn't have time for anything else. He pulled off his outer jacket, spread it on the snow, lifted the terrier first. She was lighter than she should have been, maybe 12 pounds when she should have been 20. He laid her on the lining. Then the black lab. The puppy whimpered when he picked him up. That was a good sign. Whimpering meant alive. Then the small brown one. He had to feel for a heartbeat. It was there. Slow. Faint. But there. He bundled all 3 in his coat, pressed against his chest. Ranger was already moving. The dog took point without being told. Trotted a few yards ahead, looked back, waited. Cole followed. The walk back was the longest half-mile of his life. He couldn't run. The bundle in his arms was too fragile. Every step had to be careful. The wind hit his back now, pushing him forward, but the cold was inside his shirt, inside the dog's, and he could feel the smallest one's heartbeat through the fabric. Each beat slower than the last. He kept talking to them. Not loud. Just quiet words. Stay with me. Almost there. Almost there. He passed the fence. Came up his own gravel path. The cabin lights were on the porch. He'd left them burning. He shouldered the door open. Crossed to the wood stove. Lowered the bundle in front of it. Then he started to work. He'd done a combat lifesaver course in the Navy. He treated humans, not animals, but a body in shock was a body in shock. You had to warm slowly. Too fast and you killed them. He pulled towels from the bathroom. Wrapped each dog separately. Set them in a row in front of the stove, not too close. He grabbed his sleeping bag from the bedroom and laid it over them like a tent so the heat pooled. He rubbed each one's chest. Slow. Steady. The terrier was the first to respond. She made a sound. Half whine, half cough. Her tongue moved. Then the black lab puppy started to shiver. Hard shivering. That was good. Shivering meant the body was trying. The little brown one took the longest. Cole worked on him for 10 minutes straight, rubbing his sides, breathing warm air onto his nose. Just when Cole thought he was gone, the dog opened one eye. Ranger lay down beside them. Pressed his big body against the row of small ones. Added his heat. He didn't move. Cole sat back on his heels. His hands were shaking. He hadn't felt them shake in 12 years. He stood up slowly. Walked to the kitchen. Filled a glass of water. Drank it. Filled it again. Outside, the wind kept howling. Inside, the fire popped. The 3 dogs breathed under the sleeping bag. Ranger's eyes followed Cole as he moved. Cole picked up his phone. He started to dial animal control. Stopped. Decided he'd let the dogs warm up another hour first. They were stable. The number could wait. He sat down in the chair by the stove. Looked at them. All 3 breathing. All 3 alive. He let out a long breath. For the first time since he'd seen that wooden box in the snow, he allowed himself to think the words. We made it. He set the phone on the arm of the chair. Closed his eyes for just a second. The fire crackled. The room was warm. If you're still with me, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button before this gets any darker. Because what comes next, you'll want to be there for. It was the longest second of his life. Because what he didn't know, sitting there in that chair, was that the people who had put those 3 dogs in that box weren't done. Ranger was on his feet before Cole heard anything. The dog stood up from the row of small bodies and walked stiff-legged to the front window. His hackles rose. The growl started low in his chest. The kind of growl Cole had only heard a handful of times. Cole opened his eyes. He didn't ask the dog what was wrong. He stood up, crossed to the window, and looked out. A pair of headlights had pulled up at the end of his gravel drive. Not passing. Stopped. A pickup truck. Old model. The driver had killed the engine but left the lights on. 2 men got out. Both big. Both wearing dark coats. They didn't walk toward the cabin. They walked toward the woods. Cole stood at the window and watched them. They moved with purpose. They knew where they were going. They went straight to the fence line, ducked through the gap by the gatepost, and disappeared into the trees in the direction of the clearing. Cole understood it before he had time to think it through. They were checking on the box. Whoever had left those 3 dogs out there in the snow had come back. To finish the job, maybe. Or just to see. Some men checked their handiwork. Cole turned away from the window. Walked back to the stove. Looked down at the 3 dogs under the sleeping bag. The terrier had her eyes open now. The black lab puppy was sitting up, leaning against Ranger, who had returned to his post next to them. Cole did the math fast. 3 dogs. 1 vehicle. 2 men. Probably more dogs at whatever place they came from. This wasn't a couple bad neighbors. This was an operation. People didn't drive 40 miles into the back country to dump 3 dogs in a plywood box unless they did it regularly. Unless they had a system. He'd seen this kind of thing in the Navy too. Different country, different cargo. Same principle. Whoever could be made to disappear would be. Cole pulled his phone off the chair and dialed 911. The line crackled. The signal out here was bad on the best of nights. In a snowstorm it was worse. He got 2 rings, then a voice that came through in fragments. Sheriff's office, what's your sign? 3 dogs found in a box, Cole said. 2 men returned to the site. Cole Brennan, Route 14, mile marker 38. Send someone. The voice tried to ask him a question. The line cut. He looked at the screen. No service. He pressed redial. Failed. He set the phone down. He walked to the gun cabinet by the door. Opened it. Took down the rifle. Checked the chamber. Loaded. He didn't want to use it. He just wanted them to see it. Ranger was already at the door. Cole was reaching for the latch when he saw the headlights swing. The 2 men were back. Faster than he'd expected. They'd reached the box, found it empty, and made the connection. The cabin was the only structure for 2 miles. The lights inside were on. There were footprints in fresh snow, leading from the woods to his porch. They didn't even bother to drive up the gravel. They walked. Cole watched them through the front window. They came up the path slow. 2 big men, maybe 6 foot and 6'2", both heavy. The one in front had a tire iron in his right hand, held casual against his thigh. The one behind him had something in his coat pocket. Cole couldn't see what it was. He didn't need to. The nature of the night had just changed. An hour ago this had been a rescue. Now it was something else. Cole set the rifle against the wall by the door, where he could grab it but the men couldn't see it. He didn't want to start with a gun in his hand. He wanted them to make their choice first. He looked back at the dogs by the fire. The terrier was watching him. So was Ranger. Cole took a breath. Long and slow. The way he'd been trained to breathe before a contact. He opened the door 6 inches. The 2 men were 10 feet from the porch when they saw him. They stopped. For a long second, nobody moved. The wind pushed snow sideways across the porch lights. Cole stood in the doorway with the warmth of his cabin behind him and the cold of the night in front. The 2 men stood in the snow with their breath puffing out in clouds. The one in front spoke first. We're looking for our dogs. Cole didn't answer right away. He let the silence sit. He'd learned the trick years ago. People who were lying always wanted to fill silence. People who were telling the truth could hold it. The man with the tire iron broke first. Some animals got loose from our place down the road. Tracks led up this way. You seen 'em? Cole looked at him. Looked at the tire iron in his hand. Looked at the second man's coat pocket. There's no place down the road, Cole said. Nearest property is 12 miles south. The men shifted. Look, partner, the first man said. His voice changed. Got harder. Just give us our dogs and we'll be on our way. Cole stepped onto the porch, closed the door behind him. He didn't want them seeing past him. You left them in a box, he said. The words were simple, flat. No accusation in his tone, just statement of fact. The first man's grip on the tire iron tightened. His knuckles whitened. That was the tell. That was the moment Cole knew this wasn't going to end with words.